This is a story about a farmer named Noah who built a boat, though there was no sea nor lake nor river to sail it on. Noah lived quietly with his wife and 3 sons. Ever since he'd been a boy, he loved the fertile earth and grew things that no one had ever grown before. In the evening, when his family was asleep, he sat alone in front of his house enjoying the cool evening breeze. Noah was a lonely man, for the people in his village laughed at him because he still believed in God.
Well, Farmer Noah, did you try talking to God again today?
I did.
You're crazy, Noah. There is no God. You're crazy as a blind rooster.
But Noah knew better. One day, as he walked home in the twilight after his work, he heard a voice call out to him. But looking around, he saw no one. He stood bewildered, and the voice called out to him again. Then he knew that it was the voice of God. Noah listened until night fell, and then went home.
Noah, where have you been? Your supper is cold.
Listen, all of you. You must help me. I am to build an ark.
What's that, Father?
Well, it's a sort of boat, I think.
Noah, you're a farmer. Why do we need a boat?
I don't know why, my dear, and I don't know where I can sail it. But God told me to build it.
Very well. Now eat your supper.
So Noah began to build the ark. And when he finished, God spoke to him again. Noah listened carefully and then ran home and gathered his family about him.
We must get into the ark. You, my dear, must bring all the food. You, my sons, must gather all the animals, 2 of every kind, and check them very carefully.
Why, Father?
We are all going on a long voyage. Now, hurry.
2 elephants, check. 2 ducks, check. Two tigers, check.
They brought 2 of all kinds of animals into the ark. You see, God was so grieved by the wickedness of all the people that he decided to bring a great flood and destroy them all. He chose only Noah and his family to be saved. As the last of them filed into the ark, there was a mighty clap of thunder. The first terrifying rains began. Rained 7 days. Then the floodwaters began to rise, for all the underground streams and rivers broke through the earth like great fountains. The windows of the heavens were opened, and great sheets of water fell from the clouds in a torrent. Furious storms continued 40 days, and the water rose and rose until the ark was lifted above the earth, and all those inside were quite frightened. Noah, who was himself a little afraid, went to each one and said,
Do not be frightened. The captain of our ship is a master mariner.
But we have no captain. None of us are sailors, and you're a farmer. What do you know of sailing?
Quiet, son. It is not I who am the captain.
Then the water rose higher and higher until every living thing was drowned, except those who were with Noah in the ark. Then God caused a high wind to blow over the earth. And the rain stopped. Noah opened a window and looked about, but there was only water as far as the eye could see. Then Noah turned to the raven.
Come, Raven. You must fly and tell us whether the water has dried off any place on earth. Fly.
But the raven only flew back and forth, and Noah knew that the waters had not yet dried anywhere. He waited a while and then released a dove. And he and his family and all the animals waited and waited, but they saw nothing. They all grew very impatient. And then suddenly Noah cried out.
There she is! There she is! Look! Look! Look, everyone. There is an olive leaf in her beak.
And everyone on the ark cheered. But Noah waited another 7 days and sent the dove again. But this time she didn't come back at all. And Noah knew that at last the waters had subsided and that it was safe to leave the ark. So he kneeled to give thanks to God, and God spoke to him. And Noah turned to the animals and his family and pointed to the heavens. They looked and saw beautiful bands of color curving across the sky. None of them had ever seen anything like it before. They were filled with wonder and awe. And Noah said,
It is a rainbow. God has made me a promise.
yes, God's promise that he would never again bring a flood to destroy all living things. For whenever God brings rain upon the earth, he sees the rainbow, and he remembers his promise. And Noah turned his face to the rainbow and said,
Thank you, God.
and that is the story of Noah and the ark. For many years during the time of David, Saul and his people were at war with a cruel and godless nation called Philistines. The two armies faced each other across a deep valley, and one day a Philistine warrior showed himself above the ramparts. He was a tremendous man, a giant of a man. In fact, he was over 9 feet tall. The shaft of his spear was a thick, massive beam, and its tip was of heaviest iron. And Goliath shouted a challenge to Saul's army.
Choose a man to fight me. If he kills me, we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, then you shall be our slaves, and trouble before us.
For 40 days, Goliath repeated his challenge, and there was no one who dared fight him. But one day, David the shepherd boy came into the camp and heard Goliath, and heard the men speak in terror of him. And David asked to be taken to Saul's tent.
What is it you wish, David?
I want to fight the Philistine, Your Majesty.
You, David? But you can't. You're only a boy. Do you realize that if you failed, our people would be slaves?
Your Majesty, God once saved me from a lion. He will save us from this Philistine.
Very well, David. You may fight him if you wish.
And Saul put his own armor on David, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail, and his sword.
Your Majesty,
Yes, David.
I am grateful for your armor, Your Majesty, but it will do me no good,
Why not?
because it's so heavy I can't move.
Take it off then, David. Take it off. And may God be with you.
David took a stick in one hand and his sling in the other and walked toward the Philistine, toward the terrible Goliath. Goliath couldn't believe his eyes.
What am I? A puppy dog? That they send a child after me with a stick?
Yes, Goliath, you come at me with a sword and a spear, but I come at you in the name of God.
Come on, then, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and to the beasts.
The men of both armies rose and watched as Goliath drew nearer to David. And as David ran to meet him, he put a stone in his sling and shot it. And the stone sank into Goliath's forehead where there was no armor, and Goliath fell to the earth, dead. Saul wept for joy, and the men of his armies filled the valley with their shouting, while the Philistines fled in terror. And that is how David the shepherd slew Goliath, though there was no sword in David's hand. And that is how his bravery freed his people from slavery. Once upon a time, in a land of sorcerers, there lived a prince named Daniel. Daniel was wise and just, and though he was an exile, he understood the people, and for this the emperor gave him power second only to his own. Then, of course, the other princes became jealous of Daniel, and one night they met in a dark cavern.
We must rid ourselves of this Daniel. This outsider has grown too high and mighty.
But how? He is the Emperor's favorite.
He is a foreigner, is he not? He worships an alien god, does he not?
Yes.
You will see this Daniel will be murdered, and the Emperor himself will order it.
The conspirators spun their subtle plan so craftily that the emperor suspected nothing.
Your Majesty, there are traitors in the land. You must pass a law that if anyone bows down before any man or any god other than you, he shall be thrown into the den of lions.
When the emperor signed the law, the evil princes could hardly conceal their glee. For once the law was signed, it was as unchangeable as the law that the sun and the moon must rise and fall. They knew, too, that Daniel bowed down to give thanks to God every day, and that no law of man could change this. One evening, as he knelt in prayer...
Traitor! You have defied the Emperor's law. Seize him!
And Daniel was thrown into the den of lions. Suddenly the lions grew silent, while Daniel, paralyzed with fear, not daring to move, lay crouched on the slippery stone, seeing nothing in the subterranean darkness. Just blackness, not a sound. No? What was that? He did hear something. The soft tread of padded paws circling nearer, and deep animal breathing growing louder and louder. And as he felt the lion's hot breath on his body, he rose to his knees, calling God's name, and then... there was a blinding flash of light, and Daniel opened his eyes to behold a gleaming angel who touched the cruel mouths of the lions. And Daniel knew that they would never again open while he was in their midst. When the good emperor saw Daniel unharmed, he was overcome with joy and angrily ordered the evil princes themselves thrown into the pit of lions. They were destroyed. That is how Daniel was saved from the wild beasts, and how justice was brought to evil men. But Daniel was good and beloved of God. Once upon a time, there lived a shepherd named David who played the harp. He was a brave boy and also a very good shot with the sling. He had to be, for the field on which his father's sheep grazed was surrounded by a dark wilderness. Well, one night, a huge lion sprang out of the blackness and seized a young lamb. But David killed the lion with his sling and said,
Thank you, God, for giving me strength to kill the lion.
Once David was called upon to show courage in another way. His country was ruled by a king named Saul. Saul was a strong man, but he could not sleep, for his mind was tormented, and no doctor anywhere could cure him. He had disobeyed God, and he was afraid God had deserted him. At night, when the palace was silent, he would suddenly cry out,
Why hast thou forsaken me? Why hast thou forsaken me?
Then one night, when Saul's pain was especially bad, his physician came to him.
Please, your majesty, in the mountains I heard a shepherd who plays the harp so beautifully that I know his music will cure you and give you peace.
Music? Fool! You think music can cure me?
Your majesty, we have tried everything else.
And you'll fail again. But bring me this wizard who heals with music.
And they brought David the shepherd to King Saul. David stood silently with the king's physician before the throne. The figure of the king towered above them. The physician whispered to David,
Are you afraid, boy?
No, sir.
I am told you can cure me, shepherd.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Do you really believe you can do what my physicians and all my gold could not do?
Yes, Your Majesty.
All right, then. Play.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me.
Thank you, shepherd. You have helped your king.
And thus David, because he had two kinds of courage, brought peace to Saul. And he went on to other brave deeds which found favor in the eyes of God and the people of his country. Long ago, there lived a mighty king named Nebuchadnezzar, who with his battalions of horsemen and legions of archers had conquered the city of Jerusalem and driven its people into exile. One day, he summoned one of his princes, and the man kneeled before him.
Emperor of the universe, what is thy wish?
I have conquered these people, but there are some who will never bow to our gods. They are dangerous. Bring them to me, and I will crush the memory of their god or destroy them.
Among those brought were three of great learning. The emperor sent his prince to speak to them.
Exiles, you have pleased the emperor. You shall be made nobles of the realm, and you shall be called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
And we see the first step in Nebuchadnezzar's cunning plan. Thereafter, he heaped rich rewards upon them. And when he was certain he had made them forget their God, he set forth a new law.
Build me a great golden image 90 feet high. Command that all people shall fall down and worship it. Whosoever does not shall be thrown into a furnace of flaming fire.
And it was done, and all the people obeyed, all except three, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And when Nebuchadnezzar heard this, he was filled with a thundering anger. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than ever before. And he commanded the 3 men be bound and thrown into the flames. The heat was so great that even the soldiers who threw them into the terrible cauldron were shriveled by the blast. And then Nebuchadnezzar saw a strange thing. There were not merely 3 persons in the furnace, but 4, walking as if in a garden. The flames reached up around them, but neither touched nor burned them, almost as if they were protected by a wall. And lo, the 4th figure in the midst of the white-hot flame was an angel of God. And Nebuchadnezzar was stricken with terror and cried aloud.
Come on!
Was an angel of God. And Nebuchadnezzar was stricken with terror and cried aloud.
Come out! Come out!
And when they came out, Nebuchadnezzar fell to his knees and said humbly,
Blessed is the God of these men, for there is no power on earth that is greater than this God.
That is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were good men and had courage to face death for their beliefs.